Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a journey through time and memory, brought to you by Classic Hollywood TV. Tonight, we push back the heavy velvet curtains of nostalgia to look at a phenomenon that defined an era of television. We speak of a place that existed not merely on a soundstage, but in the heart of a generation, a warm, perfectly lit living room in San Francisco, where the chaotic symphony of a broken family learning to become whole again softened the harsh grief of reality. Full House, as it was known to millions, was more than just a situation comedy. It was a sanctuary carved from light and laughter, a televised promise that no matter how deep the loss, there was always room for recovery, always a hand to hold, and always a joke waiting just around the corner to light up the darkness. It was the golden era of the multi-camera sitcom, a time when television offered a communal experience, a scripted comfort that millions sought every week. This particular house, with its iconic Victorian facade and its sprawling chosen family, seemed to offer the ultimate refuge. It was a world perfectly constructed, where problems were solved within 30 minutes, and where the lighting was always flattering, the hugs always ready, and the lessons always clear. But, as any student of Hollywood history knows, the final cut shown to the public rarely tells the whole story. The years that lay beyond those cherished end credits were never scripted by writers hoping for a happy ending. The applause fades, the set lights dim, and the actors are forced to step out of the comforting glow of their characters and into the unpredictable, often harsh light of reality. In the year 2026, we find ourselves looking back at this legacy with a mixture of reverence and melancholic curiosity. The grand tapestry of this beloved cast has been altered by the relentless march of time. Some of those faces, once fresh with the promise of youth, are still with us, older now, their features etched with the wisdom of decades spent far from that fictional San Francisco home, living quiet lives away from the blinding flashbulbs and demanding cameras. Others, heartbreakingly, have already taken their final bow, leaving behind only the flickering shadows of their performances on celluloid and digital streams. Tonight, we look back with profound gratitude to honor the ensemble cast, who transformed what could have been just another wholesome show into an enduring cultural legacy, a touchstone of comfort that refuses to fade. We begin our journey back in 1987, at the very inception of this televised magic, and right into the orbit of the show's undisputed king of cool. Jesse Katsopoulos walked into that fictional house and into the collective heart of America like a rock and roll fantasy made flesh. Draped in black leather, possessing a perfectly sculpted mane of hair, and radiating that undeniable Elvis-loving swagger, he made the whole Santana household feel instantly cooler, edgier, and more electric. The role required a specific type of magnetism, a balance of masculine bravado and surprising tenderness, and the studios found their man in the form of John Stamos, born August 19, 1963. Stamos was mere 24 years old when he first donned the leather jacket and picked up the guitar as Jesse in 1987. But what made his performance truly matter, what elevated it beyond simple teen idol status, was how he masterfully allowed the character to grow. Jess Katsopoulos could have easily remained a shallow, charming bachelor, forever focused on his music and his hair, a one-dimensional contrast to the domesticity surrounding him. Yet, Stamos, displaying a performance maturity far beyond his years, peeled back the layers of this rock and roll persona. He gave Jesse a loyalty that was fierce, a vulnerability that was surprising, and a profound, aching tenderness that slowly but surely replaced the ego that had initially defined him. His bond with the young girls, and most notably with the toddler Michelle, became one of the undisputed emotional anchors of the entire series. It was visual, weekly proof that fatherhood is not merely a biological fact. It is a daily, conscious choice to show up, to listen, and to love. Stamos curated this transformation with a polished grace, keeping his public image as a Hollywood leading man immaculate while still honoring the role that had come to define a generation's childhood. In this year of 2026, John Stamos stands at 63 years old, an elder statesman of that golden TV era. And when you re-watch his performance as Jesse now, the magic isn't just in the jokes, the catchphrases, or the music. It is found in the undeniable feeling that people, even the most stubborn and self-absorbed, can change, they can soften, and yet, through it all, they can still keep that original, essential spark that made them special in the first place. This is where we must pause, holding this image of perfection, of growth and unblemished charm. For the allure of Hollywood is not just in the bright lights we see, but in the shadows we are not yet permitted to look into. Every perfect facade has its stress fractures. Every spotlight casts a long shadow, and behind the laughter, the first whispers of challenges yet to come were already beginning to gather, waiting for the script to run out. But for now, the music plays on, and the applause is deafening as we prepare to pull back the curtain just a little further. While the world watched through the safe, rectangular frame of their television sets, a silent alchemy was taking place on the sound stages of Burbank. The transition from the high-octane rock and roll energy of Uncle Jesse to the domestic heart of the Tanner household required a steady hand, and that hand belonged to the eldest daughter, DJ Tanner. If the house was a ship sailing through the choppy waters of grief, DJ was its rudder, the responsible, caring anchor who often found herself forced to grow up much faster than any child should. Candace Cameron Bure, born April 6, 1976, was a mere 11 years old when she stepped onto the set in 1987. She was tasked with a role that demanded an incredible emotional range for a child performer. Her performance mattered because she made DJ feel like a real older sister, someone burdened by the weight of being the role model while navigating her own loss. DJ wasn't a porcelain doll of perfection. She had her insecurities, her teenage crushes, and her moments of rebellion. Yet she remained the one who held the emotional logic of the family together, while the adults around her delivered the punchlines. The industry in the late 80s was a demanding mistress, especially for young girls like Bure. She lived her adolescence under the unforgiving glare of the spotlight, where every growth spurt and every change in appearance was analyzed by millions. Behind that perfect San Francisco facade, she carried the quiet pressure of being the strong one, both on and off the screen. Viewers recognized that quiet burden, and it forged a bond between the actress and the audience that would last for decades. As the show moved into its golden years, Bure played DJ with a sincerity that never begged for applause. She allowed the audience to feel the sweetness of childhood and the strain of early adulthood in equal measure. By the time we reach 2026, Candace Cameron Bure is 50 years old, standing as a portrait of resilience. She remains the girl who learned to smile through the loss of a fictional mother and the very real pressures of Hollywood fame, helping to make that house feel like a home for everyone watching from the other side of the glass. But a house of mourning cannot survive on responsibility alone. It requires the oxygen of laughter, and that was provided by the man in the basement, Joey Gladstone. Joey was comedy with a heart, a collection of cartoon voices, goofy bits, and a childlike warmth that acted as a balm for the family's collective sorrow. Dave Coulier, born September 21, 1959, was 28 years old when he took on the role of the live-in best friend in 1987. What set Coulier apart from the standard sitcom sidekick was that he never played Joey as just a clown. Underneath the rapid-fire impressions and the slapstick physical comedy was a man characterized by a profound, selfless devotion. He was Danny's best friend who didn't merely visit for a weekend. He moved in, he stayed, and he helped raise 3 girls as if love were a professional responsibility he had personally signed for. Joey's humor was never intended to steal the scene or diminish the drama. It was designed to keep the room from breaking when life got too heavy to bear. Coulier's impeccable comedic timing made the children in the audience roar with laughter, but his underlying softness made the parents in the audience trust him. He treated the concept of family as a real, tangible commitment rather than a convenient sitcom setup. Off-screen, Coulier was a steady hand in the industry, building a career on a foundation of steady work and genuine audience affection, largely avoiding the scandals that claimed so many of his contemporaries. In 2026, at 67 years old, rewatching Joey Gladstone feels like returning to an old, reliable kind of comfort. It is a reminder of a time when laughter was not used to mock pain, but to lift it to provide a temporary escape from the realities of a changing world. Yet, even the most perfect families need a touch of chaos, a reminder that the world outside the front door is loud, messy, and unpredictable. That chaos arrived in the form of Kimmy Gibbler, the neighbor who refused to knock. Kimmy was the explosion at the door, draped in loud outfits and even louder confidence, possessing a personality that was simply too big to fit inside the strict Tanner rules of order. Andrea Barber, born July 3, 1976, was 11 years old when she began playing Kimmy in 1987. It was a role that could have easily been a one-note joke, the annoying neighbor destined to be the target of every Barb. However, Barber infused the character with a fierce, unwavering loyalty. Underneath the eccentric wardrobe and the weird habits was a best friend who always showed up, even when the family teased her, and even when she clearly didn't fit into the aesthetic of the room. That resilience is why Kimmy Gibbler remains a figure of deep affection in the hearts of fans. She refused to shrink herself to be accepted by the world, and over time, the house accepted her anyway, loud socks and all. Kimmy added an essential element of realism to the show's world-building. She made DJ's life feel like a real adolescence, proving that teenagers don't grow up only within the safety of their family, but in the messy, loud, and sometimes awkwardly unconditional friendships they choose for themselves. Barber eventually stepped away from the industry to seek a different life, only to return years later, proving that certain characters are so deeply woven into the cultural fabric that they never truly leave. In 2026, Andrea Barber is 50 years old, and Kimmy remains a vibrant reminder that being too much is often exactly what is needed, provided your heart is in the right place. As the early 90s dawned, the show was at its absolute peak, a juggernaut of ratings and cultural influence. On the surface, everything was shimmering with the gloss of success. The cast was a tightly knit unit, the scripts were sharp, and the audience was growing by the millions. But as the actors transitioned from children to teenagers and from young men to the leaders of an industry, the first cracks in the porcelain were beginning to appear behind the scenes. The golden years brought with them the intrigues of the studio system, the exhaustion of a grueling production schedule, and the dawning realization that the public's perception of them was becoming an inescapable cage. The facade was perfect, the spotlight was blinding, but the human cost of maintaining that image was beginning to accrue. We were seeing the path to fame reach its highest altitude, yet even at these heights, the air was getting thin, and the hidden dramas of the stars' personal lives were starting to hum like a low-frequency vibration beneath the floorboards of that San Francisco living room. Waiting for the moment, the laughter died down. The grand illusion of a sitcom is its permanence, the comforting lie that the characters we love will never age, never suffer, and never face a darkness that a 3-minute conversation cannot cure. But as the 1990s began to wane, and the cameras finally stopped rolling on the Tanner household, the heavy weight of reality came crashing down upon the actors who had occupied that sacred space. Behind the closed doors of the industry, a much more complex and sometimes tragic story was unfolding, one that the studios and the press worked tirelessly to harmonize with the show's wholesome image. We must look first to the man who was the very spine of the family, Danny Tanner. Bob Saget, born May 17, 1956, was the personification of the gentle, grieving father, a man who navigated his loss with a vacuum cleaner in one hand and a heart of gold in the other. He was 31 when the show began, and for 8 years, he was America's TV father. But off-screen, Saget lived in a state of professional and personal dissonance. He was a master of a much darker, sharper, and more provocative brand of comedy, a side of his soul that he had to carefully compartmentalize to maintain the sanctity of the Tanner brand. The drama here was not one of malice, but of the exhausting effort required to be a paragon of virtue for a nation while wrestling with the complexities of adult life and a career that felt increasingly like a gilded cage. When the show ended, the silence was deafening. The public did not want to see Danny Tanner in a different light, and for years, Saget walked a tightrope between his dual identities. The turning point in his narrative, however, would be a moment that shook the foundation of the fans' nostalgia. On January 9, 2022, the world woke to the devastating news that the man who had given so many children their sense of safety had passed away at the age of 65. It was a sudden, jarring exit that no script could have prepared us for. In the aftermath, the speeches he had given on screen as Danny Tanner began to resonate with a new, sharper frequency. We realized that the man who played the father was just as mortal as the grief he portrayed. The loss of Saget was the moment the fictional family truly became a memory, a turning point that forced us to confront the fact that the comfort we sought in him was now a legacy he had left behind. Even more complex was the narrative of the woman who brought the necessary adult balance to the house, Becky Katsopolis. Lori Loughlin joined the cast in 1988, and for years, she was the steady, intelligent anchor of the series. She was the one who could tame the rock and roll heart of Uncle Jesse and provide a maternal presence that was both competent and warm. But as the decades passed, the perfect facade of the wholesome sitcom star was shattered by real-world headlines that no public relations firm could suppress. The scandal that erupted around Loughlin later in her life became a defining moment for the legacy of the show, creating a jarring contrast between the morality of the Tanner living room and the complicated choices made in the pursuit of privilege. This was the drama that the studios never anticipated. The anchor of the family was suddenly adrift in a sea of controversy. It changed how millions of viewers revisited her work, forcing them to reconcile the presence of Becky with the high-stakes drama of a courtroom. It was a reminder that even the most stable characters are played by humans who are subject to the same pressures and pitfalls as anyone else. Perhaps the most poignant behind-the-scenes drama belonged to the middle child, Stephanie Tanner. Jodie Sweetin, born January 19, 1982, was only 5 when the world fell in love with her bold spirit and sharp comedic timing. She grew up before the eyes of the world, navigating the treacherous waters of child stardom where the line between the character and the self becomes dangerously blurred. Beneath the "how rude" catchphrases and the playground comedy was a young girl grappling with the immense pressure of being a public commodity. As the series ended, the transition into a normal life proved to be a mountain too high to climb without help. Sweetin faced a profound public battle with addiction, a journey through the shadows of recovery that lasted for years. For a long time, the industry stayed silent about her struggles, preferring to preserve the image of the spunky middle sister rather than acknowledge the human cost of their entertainment. Her recovery was not a sitcom plot. It was a hard-won, often painful survival story that eventually transformed her into a symbol of resilience. In 2026, her story is no longer one of a fallen star, but of a woman who had the courage to tell the truth about what happens when the lights go out. And then there were the twins, Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen, who shared the role of Michelle. They were the heartbeat of the show, starting at the age of 1. By the time they reached their teenage years, they were not just actors. They were a global empire. But the scrutiny they faced was unprecedented. The drama in their lives was the drama of being hunted by the paparazzi, of having every meal, every outfit, and every perceived flaw broadcast to a hungry public. Their turning point was the decision to walk away from the spotlight entirely, to reclaim their privacy and build a world in fashion where they could be the architects of their own identity, rather than the property of a television network. They became the ultimate Hollywood mystery, the icons who chose to disappear into a world of high fashion and silence. Why did the studios and society keep quiet about the toll it took on them? Because the image of the perfect child was too valuable to tarnish with the reality of their exhaustion. These were the secrets held behind those closed Victorian doors. A patriarch struggling with his dual nature, an anchor caught in a storm of her own making, a child star fighting for her life, and icons who had to vanish just to survive. The house was full, yes, but the hearts within it were navigating a world that the cameras were never meant to see. The enduring magic of a legacy is rarely found in its center alone. It lives in the intricate details of the orbit, the secondary characters, who added texture, depth, and a sense of a world that existed beyond the Tanner front door. As we stand in the year 2026, looking back through the soft, hazy lens of 4 decades, we realize that the true mark of this series was its ability to make the peripheral feel essential. Every visitor who stepped across that threshold brought a new dimension of humanity to the household, weaving a tapestry of relationships that defined the concept of a chosen family. We remember Steve Hale, the high school sweetheart who brought the awkward, sincere joy of first love into DJ's life. Scott Weinger, who was only 15 when he first appeared in 1991, played Steve with a warmth that felt like an open book. Off-screen, Weinger's career became a fascinating study in dual identities. While he was the face of teenage devotion to one audience, he was the voice of an animated Disney prince to millions of others, a legacy of childhood nostalgia that followed him long after he hung up his wrestling singlet. In 2026, at 51 years old, Weinger remains a symbol of the show's gentler side. A reminder of a time when young love was messy and honest, like a first chapter we all remember, even after life has written many more. The neighborhood was further enriched by the youthful chaos of Teddy. Played by Taj Mowry, Mowry brought a playful, fearless energy to the screen, expanding the Tanner universe into the wider community of San Francisco. His natural ease as a child performer hinted at the staying power he would later demonstrate across a long career in television and voice work. In this modern era, at 40 years old, Mowry stands as proof that the show was a fertile ground for genuine talent. Similarly, Jurnee Smollett, who played the confident Denise Frazier, offered a brief but brilliant spark before her career evolved into one of dramatic depth and critical acclaim. To watch her as a 6-year-old in 1992 is to witness the early flicker of a major star, a reminder that even the smallest roles in the Tanner household were touched by a certain kind of Hollywood stardust. These children grew up in the warm spill of that living room, their fictional friendships becoming part of the collective memory of an entire generation. As the show aged, it matured with its audience, allowing a bit of the mid-90s edge to seep into the wholesome atmosphere. David Lipper arrived as Viper, the rocker with a vibe that contrasted the Tanner rules without ever losing the show's essential warmth. Lipper played him with a charisma that made the teenage storylines feel current, proving that the series could adapt to the changing cultural climate while remaining true to its heart. In 2026, at 52, Lipper's transition from the cool kid of the 90s to a respected figure behind the camera reflects the professionalism that permeated the entire production. And then there were those who provided the necessary adult friction, like Richard Paul, who portrayed the stern Principal Strubridge. His character reminded us that even in a house full of love, there must be boundaries and consequences. Paul, who passed away in 1998, left behind a legacy of character, acting that grounded the sitcom in a reality we could all recognize. The later seasons also brought the next generation into the fold through Nikki and Alex Katsopoulos. Blake Toomey Wilhoit, who played Nikki, was just 2 years old when he began shifting the house's rhythm. The presence of real toddlers turned the legendary Uncle Jesse into a full-time father, a transformation that added a layer of responsibility and sweetness to the show's final years. In a rare move for a child of such immense fame, Blake chose a path of privacy as an adult, stepping away from the cameras to build an identity far from the celebrity spotlight. In 2026, at 36, his life is a testament to the fact that one can be part of a global phenomenon and still claim a quiet personal history. This contrast is mirrored in the lives of the Olsen twins, who at 40, have become icons of a different sort, architects of a fashion empire who maintain a level of privacy that is almost mythical in the digital age. We cannot speak of the legacy without honoring the elders who gave the family its roots. Yvonne Wilder, who played Irene Katsopoulos, brought the affectionate honesty of a mother who knew her son's bravado was just a mask for his heart. Her passing in 2021 at 84 years old marked the loss of another piece of the show's foundation, a reminder that the fictional family tree was built on the work of veteran performers who understood how to lift a scene with a single look. And we must reflect on Vicky Larson, played by Gail Edwards. Her relationship with Danny was a rare moment of adult maturity, showing that love is often a matter of timing and compromise. In 2026, at 74, Edwards remains a reminder that Full House wasn't just about hugs and punchlines, it was about the quiet. Sometimes difficult truths of being an adult in a world that doesn't always provide a happy ending. The mark this cast left on history is not found in awards or box office numbers, but in the way they became a permanent fixture of the American home. In 2026, the lights may have dimmed on that San Francisco set, but the feeling of that living room persists. It is a monument to the idea that a family is not defined by its beginning, but by the people who stay when life gets hard. Some of these faces have taken their final bow, leaving a void that nostalgia can only partially fill. Others carry the weight of decades, their features change but their essence familiar. They are the keepers of a specific kind of magic, a televised porch light that never truly goes out. Whether it is the laughter of Joey, the steady center of DJ, the rock and roll swagger of Jesse, or the innocent confidence of Michelle, these characters remain frozen in a state of grace, waiting in every rerun to remind us that we are never truly alone. As the final credits of our own memories roll, we find ourselves returning to that house, not for the stories themselves, but for the feeling of being safe, of being loved, and of being home. Part 5. As the final glow of the television era begins to set against the horizon of 2026, we find the inhabitants of that beloved San Francisco home navigating their most profound realities yet. The legacy of Full House is no longer just a collection of recorded memories. It has become a living testament to endurance in an industry that often forgets its pioneers. In a world that has moved on to digital horizons, the bond between these actors remains a rare, unbreakable thread in the fabric of Hollywood history. John Phillip Stamos, now 62 and approaching his 63rd year, continues to be the vibrant shepherd of the show's memory, recently making headlines not for a new role, but for a deeply personal gesture of solidarity. By choosing to wear a bald cap in public support of his lifelong friend David Alan Coulier, who at 66 is navigating a courageous battle with stage 3 non-Hodgkin lymphoma, Stamos proved that the loyalty of the Tanner family was never restricted to a script. This real-world bravery mirrors the very essence of the show, the belief that in times of darkness we do not stand alone. Meanwhile, the transition of generations continues with a sense of poetic symmetry as Candace Lane Cameron Bure celebrates her 50th year. Stepping into a new chapter as she prepares to become a grandmother, Bure brings the story of the Tanner girls full circle, transforming from the eldest daughter seeking guidance into the matriarch providing it. This milestone highlights the passage of time that has also seen the Olsen sisters, Mary Kate and Ashley, solidify their status as architects of a private, high-fashion empire. Their influence felt in every corner of the industry, even as they maintain a dignified silence that honors the privacy they fought so hard to reclaim. The world they inhabit now is a far cry from the bright lights of a sitcom set, yet the grace with which they have navigated their adulthood serves as a silent tribute to the resilience they learned in those early formative years. Plus, as we look at the empty stage and the flickering reruns, we realize that the magic was never in the architecture of the house itself, but in the people who occupied it and the millions who invited them into their own homes. The story of Full House is a story of survival, of laughter as a vital survival mechanism, and of a chosen family that refused to be broken by the unpredictable scripts of reality. Some of our heroes have departed, leaving behind a legacy of warmth that acts as a balm for those they left behind, while others continue to write new chapters of strength